What I discovered was inevitably the common denominator was the owner founder and their unwillingness to make some changes and pivots in the way they were looking at the business.
What led you to leave corporate banking after a career there and start your own entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, for me, Barrett, we were
Doug Thorpe is president and CEO of HeadwayExec and a leadership podcast host, powered by common sense with over 20 years of experience in banking, business ownership, and leadership transformation. He's helped more than 400 executives scale their companies from 5 million to 50 million and beyond.
I did not have direct partners, but I did have 4 other investors with me. My wife and I had started the company and we had our money in it, and we had recruited 4 other investors to join us.
How have you thought about your own continuity, your own succession, legacy?
And I would tell you that
if you're like most of our listeners, you love the idea of running the show, but you're constantly second guessing yourself if you're ready or the person for the job. Are you missing a key skill? Are you aware of the things you need to know, like reading a financial statement or financing the operations of a business? We are here to solve that for you. Our new free Ownership Readiness Diagnostic will rank you from 1 to 4 on 5 foundational pillars of successful business ownership. It is the ultimate confidence builder that will tell you, yes, it is time to have that conversation, or no, these are the areas that you might need a little bit more time to develop. If you're interested in taking that assessment, you can find the link for that down in the description below.
Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
My name is Barrett Young, and this is the Art of Succession podcast. My guest today is Doug Thorpe, business coach and 5 times entrepreneur. Doug has a background as an officer in the U.S. Army and a career in corporate banking, and now he works with businesses in leadership development and succession planning. Doug, welcome to the Art of Succession podcast.
Thanks, Barrett. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for being a guest. I want to start off with my initial question. I lead every episode with this, what brings you to the Art of Succession podcast today? What is the one thing that you want our audience to gain from this episode?
Well, having a passion as an entrepreneur, I know the struggles it is to watch your great idea take legs and grow. And there are some challenges every entrepreneur faces. And that's what I'd really like to talk about today is how to successfully navigate each of the major milestones in your growth as an owner.
Okay, very good. So let's talk about some of those milestones just briefly in your own history that's led you to where you are today. Do you want to give me a quick summary of your history, what brought you to this?
There are several different ideas about the stages of a company development and company growth. The one that I tend to lock in on is the notion of startup, grow up, scale up, and enterprise. And I like to keep things simple. I've seen a 7-part model, but I just use the 4-part. So in the startup phase, the owner founder is probably chief everything officer and is really touching, doing, and being everything to that business, even though they may already start adding some staff. But you're trying to get your baby idea birthed into this world and get it going. And as soon as you successfully do that, then you've got the grow up phase, just like a young person goes through their primary years in school, developing and figuring out the world around them. So does a small business. The market is going to start really informing you about what you're doing and whether it's catching traction or not. And the adjustments you might have to make along the way are very critical and important. And then when you finally start getting some momentum, you can move to that scale up phase. And that's where, hopefully, if all things are going well, you start seeing the double-digit increase year over year as your business continues to scale and expand. And then ultimately you get to that enterprise phase, and that's where you've really got a need for a robust infrastructure to keep the business going. So I was first introduced to some of the rub and the conflict in an entrepreneur's mindset when I was in banking. I watched some businesses go through those 4 stages, and some executed very well. They matured and grew through each phase, and I had wild and wonderful success. But I also saw businesses that would flame out at each of those gates. And I it bothered me as a banker because you never want to have a failing business on your book of business if you're a banker. But it frustrated me. It's like, how did this great idea, this great thing, just crash into the mountain? And what I discovered was inevitably the common denominator was the owner founder and their unwillingness to make some changes and pivots in the way they were looking at the business. And in the grow up, scale up phases, both, a lot of times owners kept a grip on the business. And so if you drew the org chart of the company, it was an hourglass with a tight pinch in the middle, and that was the owner who wanted to touch everything, be a part of everything, still do most everything. And that's not a sustainable model. And you're certainly not going to get the exponential scale that you might want.
Yeah, it's kind of like that idea of what got you here won't get you there. The
Right.
leader that you've been to this point is not the leader your company needs in this next phase. Are you willing
Correct.
to make
Correct.
those changes? So,
And some of the most, mature thinkers in that area even are the ones that go so far as to say, I think I need to hire a CEO. I'm not capable anymore of running this enterprise. So I'm going to reach out. It's more important to me as a founder investor to see this thing continue to grow. So I'm going to start bringing in the senior leadership that is necessary to allow that to happen. And it's kind of the idea of 100% of nothing is still nothing, and, 50% of something really large can be very meaningful.
okay. Share just a little bit about your own history. Like, what led you to leave corporate banking after a career there and start your own entrepreneurial journey? Just a little bit of highlights.
Yeah, for me, Barrett, we were touching on it in the green room as we were getting started here. I tell the story. I'm the only child of a hardworking single mom who actually quit her day job when I was still in elementary school to start a business. And still being in fourth or fifth grade when that happened, I didn't really understand what it meant. I just knew mom was around the house a little bit more doing work as opposed to going into an office. But as I grew and got to look back on that, I realized the significance of it was both a responsibility, but it was also a kind of freedom that she generated for herself. And that kind of got me, that fueled the entrepreneurial fire in me. And even though I came out of college and went into the Army and then went into commercial banking, I uh, still had that fire burning after I quit or left the banking world and started a consulting business. And I've been fundamentally independent entrepreneur ever since.
Okay. About what time did you make that transition? What year was that?
Well, it was quite a while ago. I left the bank after 20 years, and that was in 1998. And I've been an entrepreneur the whole time ever since.
Was that what drove your mom the freedom, or was it necessity, or like how do you equate your mom becoming an entrepreneur with your own shift out of commercial banking after 20 years to becoming an entrepreneur?
I think in my mom's case, and somewhat in my own, she had a passion for the work she really wanted to do, and she was an interior designer, and she was very gifted and skilled at it. And she was doing it for a home builder, but inevitably the architects and even the home builder company owner himself would veto some of her ideas, and there was a lot of that kind of pushback going on, which frustrated her because her name would end up getting stamped on a design, and even though it wasn't the idea that she really had, and so she didn't like that, and so that's what fueled her desire to go independent so that she could be more free with her own design ideas. In my case, I did what many old bankers do. I started a consulting business serving my bank clients, and that over many years turned into the coaching and advisory work I do now, because what I was discovering was a lot of my business leaders that were consulting clients, they didn't really need the technical delivery part of what I was doing as much as they needed an independent set of eyes and ears to listen to what they had going on, and they wanted to talk about their challenges. And I guess I had a trusting face for something. I don't know what it was, but I would go on these consulting engagements and I would get the invite to come into the office and shut the door. And they just wanted to bare their soul about what they might have had going on either at the company or even in their personal lives. And after many years of doing the consulting, I got tired of the travel that was involved with that and said, well, maybe this thing called coaching is a better solution for me. And I have ultimately had a desire to help people grow and be able to show up as their best self in whatever circumstance they're in. So that's kind of what led me to the coaching part of it. And at the same time, when I was looking at wanting to work with entrepreneurs, I realized my banking background had a big value for them because I could blend both and really optimize the opportunity for helping them solve problems specific to their business, but also directly involved in their own leadership development to run those companies.
I gotcha. How do you draw the distinction between consulting and you said travel at the time, and then coaching and then not needing to travel? How do you distinguish those 2 in your mind?
In the consulting realm, it was inevitable. We were called upon to be on site with the companies and doing, hands-on implementation of different things or project execution. In the coaching and advisory world, and of course, simultaneously, the whole world has changed a little bit in regard to the willingness to be virtual. So the topics and issues we can cover in the coaching mode and advisory mode are conducive to virtual connection as opposed to having to be on site. Now, that's not to say I haven't gone on site in my acquisition part of my practice where I am supporting buyers who are acquiring companies. I do go on site with them and we'll do leadership team meetings, we'll do workshops, we'll do various training. And, but the work leading up to that is all done virtually.
I gotcha. Okay, so that shift has been more recent in the past 8, 10 years or
Yeah.
so towards webcams, virtual meetings, things like that. You're able to do more of that from home, have a little bit of broader spread with the number of coaching clients you take versus I can
Right.
handle 3 consulting clients 1 day a week kind of thing
Right.
during that. Okay. Okay. So your shift towards consulting, it sounds like, was just a little bit, you wanted to touch on more areas than were within the realm of a commercial banker helping out a client. So they had other issues other than just the lending. And you said, I could start to advise on that and I can start to get into that.
Right.
So, what was that shift like for you after 20 years? I mean, was it obvious? Or was it just like a set retirement date, or did it start to develop and you're like, I think I could give this a try? Did you build it on the side and then go full time? What did that look
I
like
did a
for you?
little bit of building on the side. I was wrapping up an engagement. I was actually on the island of Puerto Rico doing an engagement, and at night in my hotel room, I was researching and doing my work on framing and shaping the coaching business, and up to and including, standing up a website and exploring what I needed to do. I wanted to commit to go get training and certification as a coach, and I am certified by the International Coaching Federation and several other associations relative to coaching. I'm part of the McLean Institute at Harvard Medical School. They have an institute of coaching. I'm an affiliate there. Uh, I've done work with Franklin Covey, Lee Hecht Harrison, and some of the big global brands in the coaching and talent development space.
Okay. How have you seen, other than virtual, how have you seen the demand or the need for small business coaching shift over the past 30 years?
I think we've gone through a wave of first, it was a hard sell, to be honest. People really weren't thinking about it at all. And in fact, when I was exploring the move for myself, there's a gentleman I value as a close friend and somewhat a mentor that I was talking to. And he told me, he said, "You'll never be able to sell leadership." And I said, "Really? Why do you think that?" And he said, in his humble opinion, only 5% of the CEOs in America, and that's, broad scope,
Yeah.
only 5% even talk about leadership. The other
Wow.
95 don't think about it at all. I was a little bit of a contrarian on that point with him. I said, "Well, no, I disagree with you. I think they'll be thinking about it." And to some degree, I think he was right. My early, years purely putting out leadership development, leadership training, really did feel like it was falling on deaf ears. But when I started talking about the advisory work to help your business transitions and your business growth and scale, then all of a sudden that started resonating. And it was, to be blunt, and I don't mind putting this on public airways, it's sell them what they want, but give them what they need.
Yeah. So early in that phase, it was more like, no, you need something tangible, process improvement, something that they can actually measure an ROI on, and they're not gonna be interested in this soft skills thing. Do you think that that's a shift in you as a coach, and they start to see the value and your expertise and experience in that? Or do you think that it's also just been a cultural shift over the past 25, 30 years to those CEOs waking up and realizing we need leadership too?
I think it's a both and. I've definitely had to approach it differently for my own business, but I do think the market has shifted likewise. I think particularly, one of the big things that is going on right now, there are a lot of individuals that are in their late 30s, early 40s that have been in corporate America. They're tired of that game. They've accumulated a little liquidity, and now they're looking at the market to go out and buy cash flowing businesses. This whole phenomenon, universities are calling it entrepreneur through acquisition. And that is the space I've done some work in the last couple of years. And so, my point in saying that, so my client typically has come from a corporate environment, so they've got to be reprogrammed for that corporate think and re-engaged at the entrepreneur level to realize what it's going to take to go in and transition an already running business.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into the E2A space and your work there. I want to talk though, still focusing on your shift to startup. What were some of the lessons that you learned that was like, oh wow, you're no longer in the commercial banking space. You're now like killing what having to go out and hunt and kill what you eat kind of thing with clients and produce results for them. What were some of the surprises just as you had to develop your own skills, your own shift in mindset?
Well, a couple of the big takeaway lessons are the obvious that a lot of people do end up talking about. Speaking as an entrepreneur, number one, cash is king, and you never have enough cash. You think you might, but you're not. And really mastering the art of cash flow management is a very significant milestone in being able to own and operate a business successfully, because you run into the temptation of saying, "Oh, I got a big ticket paid, so now my bank account got bloated a little bit, so you're feeling good, and you may prematurely go out and commit to a new piece of equipment or another major capital expense when in fact you're going to need that cash over the next 30 to 45 days for other obligations. And if you're not keen on proper cash flow analysis and management, you're going to run into that cash bind, and you may even be sweating being able to make a payroll without leveraging something. And that's you can talk about it all day long, but until you're laying awake at night wondering how you're going to make payroll on Friday, you don't understand what it's like.
Especially as you're stepping into a consulting business, which is very much like set time limit, project based, not recurring, monthly revenue for the rest of time. That had to be a wake up call for you of, like you said, cash is in the bank. I'm good for the next 2 or 3 months, but you need to start looking at what's the next project, start to develop that next proposal while you're still executing on the current one too.
Right.
Yeah. How did at the time, were you thinking in terms of scaling up? Were you thinking in terms of growing up, or was it how long did it take you to move from that startup phase to that grow up phase? And was that always the intent?
Well, one of my ventures actually was the creation of a service company, and it wasn't just consulting. It was actually a business process outsourcing model that was domestic outsourcing. In my banking days, I was heavily involved in real estate and mortgage finance. That was one of my verticals that I was involved in, and there was an opportunity to build a service platform to support other financial institutions and mortgage brokers that were originating loans. And the model that emerged was a back office outsourcing play, because for a mortgage lender, the cost of running a back office is a sunk cost. And if your volume is seasonal, your volume is spiking and dropping over time, you're eating a lot of that cost. So by outsourcing that function, you can make it a true variable cost to your operation and improve your margin. So that was our value proposition. And I began building this company. And at our high water mark, we had 35 employees. We were serving about 200 institutions nationwide. And then the wonderful crash of '08 happened.
Bad time to be in the mortgage industry. Yeah.
Bad time to be in the mortgage business, and it was coincidental for us. We were in our 5th year of operation, and, 5th year by all stats is a pretty meaningful milestone for small business. Many small businesses don't make it to 5 years, but there we were, that 2008 was our 5th year anniversary, and the market crash happened around us.
The 35 employees, I mean, did you have other partners in this? Was it you as the CEO? What did that look like? And how did you, as the leadership team, work through the crash?
Well, first I did not have direct partners, but I did have 4 other investors with me. It was, my wife and I had started the company, and we had our money in it, and we had recruited 4 other investors to join us, and they were, limited partners, if you will, and silent members of leadership. And when the crash of '08 really started in August of 2007, specifically in the mortgage business, the mortgage market shut down and in August of '07, and in a 45-day period, August going into September, my lender companies cumulatively lost 75% of their volume. And that was a direct correlation to my business. So we lost 75% of our opportunity in that same period. in response to all that, I got on the phone and I called the CEOs of all 200 client companies I had, and I asked them what they were seeing in the horizon, and it was bleak. It was not good. So I ended up, when I finished that round of calls, it took me several days, obviously, but I called my 4 investors and I said, "Guys, we're done. I've got confirmation from my clients. This is not getting better. It's gonna be a long trough that we're gonna live in, and I can't write any more checks, and I'm not gonna ask you to write any more checks. I think we need to execute our wind down clause in our agreement and call it a day," and they agreed.
Wow. Okay. So pretty much in the span of 2 months, you went from the full operation to fully closing the thing down based on 200 conversations with people in the weeds on this. That's How did you work through that personally as a leader, your own development, and then come out on the other side and wanna continue?
Well, what happened for me, and to this day, my wife teases me about it. I said to her, she said, "What are we going to do?" And I said to her, "Well, I'm a smart guy. I've got a good resume and a background. I'll probably find something in another, 3 to 6 months." And that didn't happen. Unemployment at that point, early '08, it was up in the high double digits in a lot of markets. My own market here in the Houston area was about 18% at its high point, and a lot of white collar jobs were affected that way. And I got involved with a faith-based ministry that was helping job seekers, and I started attending some of their workshops. But the problem was, in the Houston geography, this particular organization was 45 miles away from me one way. And that summer in '08, gas was $4.50 a gallon. And if you're unemployed and gas is 4.5, you don't drive 90 miles round trip every week. So I talked to the leadership at this organization. I said, "Would you guys essentially franchise? I'd be interested in coming on board and running a branch of this out in my county, and because there will be a lot of people in my geography that need this, but they too are not driving 45 miles to get it." And the organization said, "No, but Godspeed, do your own, do whatever you want to do." So my entrepreneurial juices kicked up again, and I talked to 4 or 5 good friends, colleagues, and supporters, and they funded the creation of a nonprofit that we started in my county. And we designed our own program for coaching people about their job search function. And over the next 3.5 years, we coached over 4,500 people through our program.
Wow. So you were one of these,
I
you
was
were the
one.
target market in this case, and
Right.
you built your next job
Right.
serving that target market then.
Yep.
When unemployment is that high, I mean, how do you pivot? How do you determine leave it all behind, scrap the previous career and it's time to shift? When so much identity, especially as a white collar professional myself, and a man, and a Christian, all that kind of stuff. So much of who I am is wrapped up in the work that I do and the joy that it gives me. How do you work through that, just through that
Well,
period?
it's interesting you bring that up. That was actually the first big revelation that I ran into operating this thing, and it didn't take me long to identify that that was the number one problem. Unemployment was not the problem; it was loss of identity that was the problem. And we rapidly uh, studied that and put a program together. We created our own version of a 6-step program for job search success. It was an acronym that we used called STRIVE. And the first 2 steps had to do with reassessing your life. a reconnecting with your own sense of personal purpose and direction before you even start writing a resume and going to the market. Because if you've truly lost your identity, wound up in the job you had or the title you carried, you don't know what you're selling anymore. It's not sufficient to say, I want to keep being an engineer, I want to keep being an accountant. You have to truly reconnect. And interestingly, as we guided people through that journey, we saw people doing 180s in their career path. They dealt with the inevitable truth that the market put you out on the street. It was through no fault of your own that you lost your career there. Why not repurpose and redirect what you want to do for the rest of your life? And a lot of people took us up on that and totally reframed and retooled. We helped them with how to translate whatever their technical experience had been in their jobs into language that could fit for the transition, not too different from what military veterans face when they leave the military and go into the civilian world. There has to be a lot of translation done to talk about skills you learned and abilities you've got. It has to be taken out of that military speak and put into more corporate language. But we did the same thing with other people in their career paths. We were very successful. We actually had a very high success rate of people landing new opportunities, even in a bad market.
I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of my discussion with Doug Thorpe. We have new episodes twice a month, interviewing business owners with their own succession stories right here on The Art of Succession. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find the link for that down in the description below. We're going to pick up part 2 of our discussion, where Doug and I are going to discuss the growth that is required of an individual to step into business leadership, and you can find that linked right here. If you've enjoyed this episode, I ask that you please share it with somebody else, and I want to thank you for watching The Art of Succession.